Imagine walking into your job, right? Every single day for nearly 3 months. You were putting in back-breaking labor, and you come home with absolutely nothing to show for it.
Yeah, nothing at all.
Literally zero. You aren't just broke. Your community, literally thinks you're cursed. People are crossing the street to avoid you.
Right, because your failure is basically seen as contagious at that point.
Exactly. Your closest friends are forced to abandon you. Yet somehow you wake up on day 85, you look in the mirror, and you feel completely undefeated.
It sounds impossible.
It does. But today, we are examining how a person actually accomplishes that psychological impossibility. Okay, let's unpack this. We have a really incredible mission for this deep dive.
We do. We are looking at the actual mechanics of absolute resilience, and we've got an amazing set of sources to guide us today.
Yeah, an extensive set of excerpts from Ernest Hemingway's Pulitzer and Nobel Prize-winning masterpiece, The Old Man and the Sea.
Plus some really vital biographical details about Hemingway himself. And, we're also looking at the specific historical context of the book's dedication.
Oh, right, to Charlie Scribner and Max Perkins.
Yeah, two absolute titans of the publishing world who essentially built modern American literature.
And if you're listening right now, we really want to make it clear that we aren't here to just, do a recap of a fishing trip.
Definitely not.
We are unpacking the psychology of endurance here. We want to understand how we define success and failure in our own lives.
Yeah.
And how you can face your own unwinnable battles without being entirely hollowed out by them.
Because there's this profound irony at the center of this entire text. How does a story about an old man who technically fails to bring a fish to market, how does that become the ultimate global symbol of triumph?
Right. It's wild when you frame it like that.
What's fascinating here is to understand the triumph, we first have to really measure the absolute depth of the failure that comes before it.
Yeah, you have to hit rock bottom first.
Exactly. The text introduces us to Santiago, and his predicament isn't just like a slump. It is a total collapse of his livelihood. He's this old, gaunt fisherman who has gone 84 days without taking a single fish.
I really want you, the listener, to internalize that number. 84 days.
It's almost a quarter of a year.
Yeah. Think about the psychological toll of that kind of prolonged failure.
Right.
I mean, if you were an entrepreneur who has spent 3 months failing to secure funding, just hearing no after no.
Oh, that creeping dread.
Right. Or a creative experiencing massive imposter syndrome, staring at a blank page day after day. You know that dread. The doubt doesn't just knock on the door. It moves in and completely rearranges your furniture.
And the isolation really compounds the failure. In Santiago's community, this 84-day streak isn't just viewed as a statistical anomaly, right? It's not just a dry spell. He has been labeled Salau.
Salau.
Yeah, Hemingway uses this specific word to describe the worst possible form of unlucky. It's not an event anymore. It becomes this identity thrust upon him by society.
It's treated like a disease.
Yeah.
Like a contagion.
Exactly. And the collateral damage of that label is immediate. Santiago has this boy, Manolin, who he just loves deeply.
He taught this kid how to fish from the time he was, 5 years old?
Right, 5 years old. But because Santiago is Salau, the boy's parents have basically forced him to leave the old man and go work on a luckier boat.
A boat that caught 3 good fish in its very first week, I think the text says.
Yeah. The parents are essentially saying, look, we cannot risk our son's future by associating him with your failure.
That is just brutal. And you see the humiliation play out in their daily routine. Every single evening, the boy watches Santiago come into the harbor with an empty skiff, and he goes down to help him carry his gear.
It's a really sad image.
It really is. Hemingway gives us this devastating visual representation of the failure. He describes the sail of Santiago's skiff as being patched with these old flour sacks.
Right, and when it's furled around the mast?
Yeah, it looks like the flag of permanent defeat. That's the exact quote.
So powerful. And the physical deterioration of the man matches the boat. Santiago's body is just battered by his environment. He's got these brown blotches of benign skin cancer from the sun reflecting off the tropic sea.
And his hands. The deep creased scars from handling heavy fish on cords in the past. But the text explicitly notes something really interesting about those scars.
Yeah, none of them are fresh.
Right. They're as old as erosions in a fishless desert.
That phrasing is incredible. It implies a total barrenness. He is a landscape that literally hasn't seen rain in years.
But then, and this is where it shifts everything about his physical reality. The empty boat, the patched fail, the aging body, it all screams defeat. But Hemingway immediately subverts this with a single physical detail.
The eyes.
Yes, everything about Santiago is old except his eyes. Hemingway writes that they were the same color as the sea and were cheerful and undefeated.
To have undefeated eyes when your physical reality is quite literally falling apart, I mean, that means you have completely divorced your core self-worth from your current circumstances.
Which forces a really uncomfortable question for anyone stuck in a long-term professional or personal slump, honestly. At what point does this kind of persistence stop being noble and start becoming foolishness?
Well, the text suggests it never becomes foolishness as long as you maintain your dignity.
Right.
And Santiago and the boy, they maintain that dignity through a very specific, deliberate ritual. They engage in this daily fiction.
I love this part.
They sit in Santiago's shack, which is just made of tough guano, palm shields with a dirt floor, nothing fancy. And the boy asks what there is to eat. Santiago replies, a pot of yellow rice with fish.
And then the boy asks if he can take the cast net to go catch sardines. But the narrative reveals there is no cast net.
They sold it a long time ago.
Right. There is no yellow rice. There is no fish. They go through this elaborate fiction every single day. And it's crucial to understand for the listener, this isn't delusion or dementia. Santiago isn't crazy here.
Not at all. He is building a psychological boundary against despair. It's entirely a ritual of self-respect. If they admit out loud that there is no food and no gear, they admit that the Salo identity has won. By playing out the fiction, they preserve a baseline of human dignity. It acts as a stabilizing mechanism.
But it requires a massive amount of internal balance to pull that off. Hemingway writes that Santiago was too simple to wonder when he had attained humility. But he knew he had attained it, and he knew it was not disgraceful, and it carried no laws of true pride.
That's a great distinction.
We so often treat humility and pride as opposites, right? But here they are complementary forces.
Yeah.
Humility is accepting the reality of the situation without ego.
Yeah, he accepts that he hasn't caught a fish, he accepts his aging body, he accepts his poverty.
Exactly. But pride is knowing your inherent capability and worth despite that external situation.
Yeah.
Because he balances both, he avoids the trap of despair.
And that balance allows him to make a really conscious decision. He decides that the 85th day will be his lucky day. He tells the boy he is going to go far out.
Far out, leaving the safety of the normal fishing grounds.
Which is such a massive risk.
But it makes sense. When you are trapped in a legendary slump, you eventually realize you cannot keep casting your line in the exact same shallow water where everyone else is fishing and expect a different result.
Right, insanity is doing the same thing over and over.
You have to abandon the conventional boundaries.
Yeah.
You have to row out into the deep water where the risks are exponentially higher, sure, but the potential is just unparalleled.
So Santiago rows out in the dark long before the sun comes up. He leaves the smell of the land totally behind him. He heads for a part of the ocean the fishermen call the Great Well.
It's where the ocean floor suddenly drops 700 fathoms.
Basically an abyss. And as he rows, Hemingway reveals this deep philosophical divide between Santiago and the rest of the world regarding how they view their environment.
Santiago thinks of the sea as la mar, which is feminine in Spanish. He views the ocean as a woman who gives or withholds great favors.
And if she does wild or wicked things, it's because she can't help them.
Right. The moon affects her as it does a woman. He feels this very intimate relational connection to the water.
But contrast that with the younger fishermen. The ones who use, modern buoys as floats. The ones who bought motorboats when the shark liver market was booming.
You guys making real money.
Exactly. They speak of the sea as el mar, the masculine. They view the ocean as a contestant. It's a place to conquer or simply a resource to be extracted from.
Okay, let me challenge Santiago's worldview here for a second, because I feel like it is very easy to romanticize the noble old man who respects nature while shunning the modern world,
Sure.
But isn't his dedication to these old methods actually a massive flaw? I mean, the younger guys with the motorboats are treating the ocean like a business, and they are succeeding.
You're bringing home the catch.
Yeah, they're coming back to the terrace with marlin. They're taking sharks to the shark factory and making solid money. They aren't going hungry. They aren't pretending to eat imaginary yellow rice just to save face. Is Santiago just like a stubborn dinosaur refusing to adapt to a changing economy?
Well, the text actually anticipates that exact critique. Santiago is absolutely an anachronism. But Hemingway is drawing a real distinction here between extracting wealth and honoring a craft.
Okay, unpack that.
The younger fishermen extract resources, but they don't know the sea. They just bulldoze their way through the environment. Santiago's method isn't just blind stubbornness, it is an absolute masterclass in precision and deep environmental literacy.
His precision in the dark really is staggering. Before the sun is even up, he has his bait set. One is at exactly 40 fathoms.
The second is at 75.
Right, and the third and fourth are at 100 and 125 fathoms. And the physical preparation of these baits is almost obsessive.
It is. Each bait hangs head down. He ties and sews the shank of the hook solidly inside the bait fish. Every single projecting part of the hook, the curve, the barb, is completely covered with fresh sardines.
He hooks each sardine through both eyes so they make a half garland around the steel.
Yeah, he ensures there is absolutely no part of the hook that a great fish could feel that isn't sweet-smelling and good-tasting.
And he watches his lines constantly, keeping them straighter than anyone else. He thinks about how other fishermen let their lines drift with the current, so they might be at 60 fathoms when the guys actually think they are at 100.
But Santiago insists on exactness, which leads to the defining philosophy of his craft. He thinks, and this is a direct quote, "It is better to be lucky, but I would rather be exact. Then when luck comes, you are ready."
Oh, if you are taking notes on your own career or life right now, please underline that concept. We have absolutely no control over the macroeconomic climate. You can't control market shifts, right?
Or a sudden industry disruption.
Or sheer blind luck.
Yeah.
But you possess total control over where you place your baits.
Yes.
You control the exactness of your daily habits, the rigor of your preparation, the quality of your code, or the thoroughness of your pitch.
Because if a massive opportunity swims by the equivalent of, say, a 1,500-pound marlin, and your bait is drifting haphazardly 20 fathoms above where you think it is?
Or if the hook of your unpreparedness is totally exposed.
Exactly. That luck passes you right by and goes to someone else. You do the agonizing invisible work in the dark solely so that you are ready when the universe finally offers a favorable variable.
And Santiago navigates that dark by reading the biological signs of the ecosystem like a radar screen. It's amazing. He listens for the trembling sound of the flying fish leaving the water, calling them his principal friends on the ocean.
He watches the small, delicate terns dipping and hunting. He feels empathy for birds that seem almost too fragile for such a cruel environment.
He even uses the dangerous elements of the ecosystem to his advantage, which I found fascinating. He spots the Portuguese man-of-war, the Alguamala, floating on the surface.
Bright, with those beautiful purple bubble trails.
Yeah, but those trails have deadly filaments a yard behind it that can poison oak-like sores. He calls it the falsest thing in the sea, but he watches the giant loggerhead turtles eat them. They just shut their eyes and consume the toxic filaments whole.
His immersion in this environment is total. And finally, on the 85th day, exactly at noon, 100 fathoms down, one of those perfectly placed green sticks dips sharply.
The exactness finally intersects with the luck.
Yes. Something takes the bait. Now, you would think the slump is over and the celebration begins, right?
I hope so.
But getting the bite is merely the opening bell for an ordeal that really tests the limits of human endurance.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When the fish takes the bait, the weight of it is incomprehensible. Santiago lets the line slip through his fingers, unrolling his reserve coils. He sets the hook with all his strength, pivoting his entire body. But he can't raise the fish an inch.
Not even an inch. The boat itself begins to move.
The fish starts towing the skiff out into the open ocean. Just consider the business equivalent of this scenario for a second. You hustle for months, maybe years, to land a massive whale of a client. You secure the contract of your dreams. You set the hook.
But the moment the ink is dry, you realize the scope of this project is dangerously beyond your team's capacity.
Exactly. You aren't reeling the project in. The project is dragging you out to sea. It dictates your hours. It destroys your weekends. It completely consumes your health. You are entirely tethered to it, moving at its mercy.
It is the terrifying burden of the answered prayer. He wanted the giant fish, and now he is quite literally bound to it. The physical suffering required simply to hold the line is agonizing. The heavy line cuts a deep groove across his back. When the fish lurches suddenly in the night, it pulls Santiago face first into the bow, cutting him below the eye. The friction burns his hands.
And the most terrifying moment is when his left hand cramps into this tight, rigid claw. He calls it a treachery of his own body.
He refers to it as rigor mortis.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And to prevent himself from passing out from exhaustion and just the sheer caloric deficit, he has to regress to a state of primal survival.
He really does.
He forces himself to eat raw tuna, chewing the dark red meat just to keep his strength up, Later, he catches a dolphin, a dorado. When he guts it, he finds two whole flying fish inside its stomach. He eats those raw too.
He even shakes tiny, nutrient-dense shrimp out of a patch of yellow gulf weed, chewing up the shells and tails.
He is stripping away every layer of civilization, reducing himself to his most elemental state just to stay in the fight. But flesh and muscle alone cannot sustain an effort like this.
No, they can't. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the central revelation of this section is how his mind actively manages and overrides the deterioration of his body.
His psychological coping mechanisms are fascinating. He starts talking out loud just to break the suffocating silence. He talks to himself, he talks to the fish.
Swearing I'll stay with you until I'm dead.
Yeah. He even speaks to a tired little warbler bird that lands on the taut fishing line to rest. He tells the bird to take a good rest, then go in and take its chance like any man or bird or fish.
And over he repeats the phrase, I wish I had the boy.
I wish I had the boy.
That phrase functions on multiple levels. Practically, yeah, he needs Manilin's physical strength to manage the coils of line. Emotionally, it is a profound admission of human loneliness. He explicitly states that no one should be alone in their old age.
But his most powerful mental tool is his obsession with baseball, right? Yeah. Specifically the New York Yankees and their star player, Joe DiMaggio.
It seems like such an absurd, specific fixation when you are fighting for your life in the middle of the Gulf Stream, but he constantly asks himself if the great DiMaggio would stay with a fish as long as he has.
And he focuses specifically on an injury. DiMaggio suffered a bone spur in his heel.
The mechanism of mental benchmarking here is extraordinary. Santiago doesn't actually understand the medical reality of a bone spur. He asks himself, un espoi de hueso, we do not have them. Can it be as painful as the spur of a fighting cock in one's heel?
He turns a sports injury into a mythological ordeal.
Exactly. He tells himself that DiMaggio plays perfectly despite the agony of the bone spur. Therefore, Santiago must endure his cramped hand and bleeding back to prove he is worthy of his hero.
We all invent our own bone spurs to survive extreme stress, don't we?
We absolutely do.
I mean, if you are running a marathon and your legs are seizing up, or if you are pulling a third consecutive all-nighter to finish a dissertation, your brain instinctively searches for a comparison. You think of a mentor who overcame bankruptcy, or an athlete who played through a fracture.
You benchmark your suffering against their mythological pain to eliminate your own excuses.
Right. You borrow their strength to bridge the gap in your own endurance. And when borrowed mythology isn't enough, Santiago mines his own history for fuel. Sitting in the dark, being pulled relentlessly, he forces his mind back to a tavern in Casablanca years ago.
The arm wrestling match?
The arm wrestling match. It is one of the most cinematic memories in the text. He played the hand game with a man from Cienfuegos who was considered the strongest man on the docks. They sat with their elbows on a chalk line on a table, hands gripped tight, for 24 uninterrupted hours.
24 hours. Just sitting there.
Can you imagine? And the vividness of the memory acts as a psychological anchor for him. He remembers the bright blue painted walls, the huge shadows cast by the kerosene lamps. Bettors are coming in and out, shifting the odds.
People are feeding the other man rum and lighting cigarettes for him.
Yeah, and the physical toll is immense. Blood is coming out from under the fingernails of both men. Referees are literally begging for a draw so people can go to work on the docks loading sugar.
But Santiago refuses to concede.
He unleashes a final, tremendous effort and forces the massive man's hand down to the wood. After that day, they called him the champion.
He isn't remembering this out of vanity, though.
No, not at all.
He summons this memory to remind his failing body of its historical capacity. He is telling his own nervous system, like, I was the champion once. That architecture of will still exists inside of me.
It is a vital mental retreat because endurance, by definition, is a holding pattern. You are simply trying to outlast the pain. But a holding pattern cannot sustain itself indefinitely. Eventually, the physics of the situation must shift.
And it does. The fish begins to tire, and passive endurance must immediately transform into violent, decisive action. On the third day, the dynamic finally shifts.
The line starts slanting upward. The fish begins to circle the boat.
But the physical toll on Santiago has reached absolute critical mass at this point. He is seeing black spots dancing in his vision. He is dizzy, faint, and literally on the verge of passing out into the water.
He even promises to say 100 Our Fathers and 100 Hail Marys just to keep his heart from stopping.
On the third turn of the circle, the fish finally breaks the surface, and the sheer, overwhelming scale of the animal is terrifying.
Even Santiago's first reaction is total denial. He said no, he can't be that big.
But the reality is undeniable. The fish is 1,500 pounds.
Wow.
It is 2 feet longer than the skiff Santiago is sitting in. It is banded with thick purple stripes, its pectoral fins are spread wide like wings, and it is armed with a sword as long as a baseball bat and tapered like a rapier.
It is a moment of transcendent awe. But Santiago knows he cannot simply marvel at it. He has to pull this massive creature close enough to strike not the head but the heart.
Right.
He is pulling the line with a mushy, ruined hand, feeling his consciousness just slipping away while the fish continually rights itself and swims away from the boat. And in this moment of supreme effort, Santiago actually speaks to the fish again.
Yeah, he says, "Fish, you were going to have to die anyway. Do you have to kill me too?"
And then his thoughts shift to this profound reverence. He says, "You are killing me, fish, but you have a right to. Never have I seen a greater or more beautiful or a calmer or more noble thing than you, brother. Come on and kill me. I do not care who kills who."
It is the ultimate distillation of testing one's will against an equal force. He summons strength he didn't even know existed. He drops the line, lifts the heavy harpoon as high as he can, and drives it down with the entire weight of his failing body into the fish's side, right behind the great chest fin.
The fish crashes into the water, sending a massive spray over the old man. And then it floats up on its back, its silver belly to the sky, a cloud of blood spreading in the mile deep blue water.
The kill is successful.
But we have to pause here to untangle the moral confusion of this act. So what does this all mean? I mean, Santiago continuously calls the fish his brother. He respects it deeply. He openly admits the fish is more noble and able than he is. So why, if he loves and respects this creature so much, is he compelled to destroy it?
What's fascinating here is how it highlights the central paradox of Hemingway's philosophy. Love, respect, and destruction are not mutually exclusive forces in the natural world.
Interesting.
In fact, they are intimately bound together. Santiago does not kill the fish out of malice, hatred, or even greed. He kills it because it is his fundamental nature to be a fisherman, just as it is the fish's fundamental nature to struggle and survive.
It's a communion achieved purely through combat.
Exactly. By fighting the fish to the death, yielding nothing, he honors its greatness in the only way nature allows.
It is a brutal, elemental kind of respect. But what strikes me the most about this climax is how rapidly the spiritual high evaporates. The harpoon strikes, the fish dies, the profound spiritual communion is achieved, and instantly, Santiago is plunged into what he explicitly calls the slave work.
The poetry vanishes, and the unforgiving physics of the ocean just resume. The fish is dead, but it is far too massive to pull into the skiff.
If he attempted to haul it aboard, the weight would swamp the boat and sink them both.
Right. So he is forced to maneuver the skiff alongside the giant carcass, thread ropes through its gills and around its sword, noose its tail, and physically lash it to the side of the boat. It is akin to trying to tie a larger ship to a much smaller rowboat.
This transition perfectly captured the profound gap between the dream of success and the physical reality of managing it. The dream is the thrilling harpoon strike. The reality is the bloody, exhausting, logistical nightmare of dealing with a 1,500-pound carcass.
He has to bail water, step the heavy mast, rig the boom, and try to sail a tiny boat that is now dangerously heavily weighted on one side.
He has transitioned from a state of focused combat into a state of maximum vulnerability. He is utterly exhausted, his primary weapons are compromised, his hands are torn open, and his mobility is severely restricted by the massive weight attached to his hull.
And most dangerously, he is dragging a beacon of fresh blood through the currents.
Which brings us to the inevitable, tragic consequence of his ambition. Because every massive, unprecedented success sends blood into the water.
Always.
When you achieve something monumental, when you build a wildly successful company, launch a product that disrupts an industry, or create a piece of art that changes the culture, you do not get to simply sail home in peace.
The scale of your success attracts forces that are designed to tear that success apart.
You attract the sharks.
The ocean does not let you keep a prize that big without a secondary fight. Just 1 hour after the kill, the first shark hits. And Hemingway makes sure the reader understands this is not a random accident. This shark came up from deep down specifically because of the dark cloud of blood settling in the mile-deep sea.
It's a mako shark. And interestingly, Santiago respects the mako. He observes that everything about it is beautiful, except its jaws.
It is built to swim as fast as the fastest fish in the sea.
It has 8 rows of teeth, slanted inward, shaped like a man's fingers, crisp like claws, with razor-sharp cutting edges.
The mako is an apex predator. It does not circle. It attacks directly and without hesitation. It hits the marlin near the tail, tearing away a massive chunk of meat.
But Santiago's head is clear. He takes his harpoon and rams it down with perfect precision into the shark's brain. He kills the mako instantly.
But the victory comes at a devastating cost.
As the dead mako sinks into the abyss, the rope snaps, the shark takes the harpoon down with it. Santiago has lost his primary weapon.
He looks at the mutilated tail of his prize and mutters a line that is absolutely crushing. He says, "It was too good to last."
The mako took 40 pounds of the best meat, and it stripped him of his defense.
But the mako was just the vanguard. The mako was a worthy adversary, a noble hunter. What comes next are the galanos, the shovel-nosed sharks.
And Hemingway paints them in a completely different light.
He describes them as hateful, bad-smelling scavengers. They aren't noble, they're simply a moving, mindless appetite.
If the mako is the massive direct crisis that hits your business like a sudden lawsuit or a market crash, you can respect the threat and fight it directly. The galanos are different.
Yeah, how so?
Bring back that analogy of the massive whale of a client. The galanos are the scope creep. They're the cheap competitors who rip off your IP. They're the demanding subcontractors, the daily grind of bureaucracy, the endless revisions that slowly chip away at the monumental project you were so proud of until the joy and the value are entirely consumed. They just come and come and come.
You watch how Santiago's internal state fractures as the galanos arrive. He lashes his knife to the butt of an oar to improvise a weapon. He manages to kill 2 of them, but the knife blade snaps off in the brain of the second shark.
Oh, that's rough.
He is reduced to using a short wooden club to beat them over their rubbery heads. He fights with desperate physical rage, but the psychological weight begins to crush him.
He starts to experience profound regret. He looks at the mangled fish and says, "I'm sorry about it, fish. It makes everything wrong."
He realizes the fatal flaw in his ambition. By going too far out, beyond all people and safe boundaries, he secured the ultimate prize, but he simultaneously guaranteed he would never be able to protect it.
He even begins to contemplate sin, which is a massive shift for a character who previously seemed so spiritually secure. He wonders, did I kill the fish out of pride? Was it a sin to kill something I loved?
He tries to rationalize it by telling himself he was born to be a fisherman and the fish was born to be a fish, but the guilt lingers. He feels that he has betrayed the noble creature by allowing it to be mutilated by scavengers.
The sensory details of this slow destruction are horrific. He hears the clicking chops of the shark's jaws. He feels the rubbery solidity of their heads jarring up his arms when he hits them with the club.
When the final pack of sharks swarms the boat at midnight, he is fighting them with the splintered butt of the tiller because the club is gone.
And during that chaotic, blind struggle in the dark, he tastes something strange in his mouth.
It is described as coppery and sweet.
Blood. He is bleeding internally from the sheer catastrophic exertion of the fight. And when the final shark rolls away, satiated, there is nothing left of the marlin. Just a white, naked line of backbone, the head and the tail.
The physical prize is entirely irrevocably gone.
And yet, sitting in the wreckage of his monumental failure, Hemingway delivers the defining thesis of the novel.
It is the quote that has echoed through literature and philosophy for decades. Santiago thinks to himself, "But man is not made for defeat. A man can be destroyed, but not defeated."
We have to unpack the mechanics of that statement. A man can be destroyed but not defeated. How do we logically reconcile that? His fish is completely gone. His weapons, the harpoon, the knife, the club, are lost or broken. His body is ruined, bleeding internally. He has quite literally been destroyed by this experience. How can he claim he is not defeated?
Because Hemingway is fundamentally redefining the metric of victory. If victory is solely the meat you bring to the market, the monetary reward, the visible trophy, then Santiago has lost utterly. He is a failure.
But Hemingway argues that the market is fickle.
Right, the sharks will always take their bite. If victory is defined as the maintenance of your internal will, the refusal to surrender your dignity, the absolute commitment to fighting until your very last weapon shatters, then Santiago remains completely undefeated.
The sharks consume the physical prize, but they lacked the capacity to consume his spirit. He yielded nothing willingly.
He asks himself out loud,
Yeah.
"What beat you?" And his answer is so quiet, so devoid of ego. He says, "Nothing. I went out too far."
He accepts total responsibility for the outcome. He doesn't curse the sharks. Sharks are simply fulfilling their nature. He doesn't blame the sea or the moon. He accepts the brutal consequence of his own extraordinary ambition.
And with that radical acceptance comes a strange, profound peace. The chaotic narrative shifts. The wind's blowing strongly, he is inside the current, and he sails the empty, lighter skiff back toward the quiet harbor.
The focus moves from the wild, uncontrollable sea back to the solid, grounding reality of the land. But the aftermath of this journey is haunting.
It really is.
He arrives at the harbor in the dead of night. He has to unstep the heavy wooden mast and carry it back to his shack. The imagery Hemingway uses here is impossible to ignore. Santiago shoulders the mast and starts up the hill. He falls under the weight and lies there with the mast across his shoulder.
He has to sit down and rest 5 separate times before he finally reaches his door.
It is a direct, undeniable parallel to Christ carrying the cross to Calvary. Hemingway is elevating the fisherman's struggle to the level of spiritual martyrdom.
And when Santiago finally reaches his bed, he sleeps face down with his arms out straight and the palms of his hands facing up. It is the exact posture of crucifixion. He has sacrificed his physical body for the spiritual endeavor.
The next morning, the boy, Manolin, finds him sleeping. The boy looks at the ruined, cut-up hands of the old man and just starts sobbing.
He goes down the road to get coffee, crying the entire way, completely unashamed.
But the conversation they have when Santiago wakes up shifts the entire trajectory of their relationship.
Santiago looks at the boy and admits, "They beat me, Manolin. They truly beat me." And the boy fiercely, categorically rejects this assessment. He says, "He didn't beat you, not the fish."
Santiago agrees, conceding that it was the sharks afterwards that beat him. But then Santiago insists he is not lucky anymore, that the Salau curse remains.
And Manolin responds with absolute defiance, "The hell with luck. I'll bring the luck with me."
Manolin rejects the entire premise of the Salau curse. He has seen the 18-foot skeleton lashed to the side of the boat. He understands the absolute, unparalleled mastery it took to catch and hold a fish of that magnitude.
He doesn't care about the missing meat. He cares about the character of the man who held the line. He says, "We will fish together now, for I still have much to learn."
The boy recognizes the profound spiritual victory embedded in the physical failure. But the tragedy is that the world at large does not. And that brings us to the final, crushing irony of the text.
The scene with the tourists at the terrace. That afternoon, a female tourist is looking down into the water and sees the massive white spine and the huge tail of the marlin swaying in the tide among the empty beer cans and dead barracudas.
She asks a waiter what it is. The waiter says tiburon, meaning shark, trying to explain in broken English what ate the great fish.
But the tourist completely misunderstands. She says, "I didn't know sharks had such handsome, beautifully formed tails."
Her companion simply agrees. They look at the physical evidence of the greatest, most tragic, most heroic struggle of a man's life, and they think it is just a piece of garbage in the water. They completely misinterpret the reality of what happened.
It highlights the profound, terrifying isolation of our deepest struggles. You can go through the most transformative, grueling, soul-crushing, and soul-forging experience of your entire life. You can battle your demons in the deep water for 3 agonizing days.
And when you come back, forever changed, the outside world might just glance at the wreckage and see garbage. They will never, ever understand the depth of what you endured. Your victory must be entirely internal because external validation is fundamentally unreliable.
This raises an important question, especially when we look at the man who created this narrative, because to truly grasp the depth of this text, we really have to look at the biographical context of Ernest Hemingway himself.
Let's examine the biography provided in our source material. Hemingway was born in 1899. He lived a life of extreme physical and psychological intensity. He volunteered as an ambulance driver on the Italian front in the First World War and was seriously wounded by mortar fire.
He was a central figure of the lost generation of expatriates in Paris in the 1920s, mingling with F. Scott Fitzgerald and Gertrude Stein.
He was a war correspondent, a big game hunter in Africa, and a deep-sea fisherman in Cuba.
He was a man who constantly tested his own endurance. The Old Man in the Sea was published in 1952, won the Pulitzer Prize in 1953, and was explicitly cited when he won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954.
The Nobel Committee specifically praised his mastery of the art of narration.
But the tragic irony of his biography is unavoidable. Our sources note that Hemingway died by suicide in Ketchum, Idaho, in 1961.
He wrote what is arguably the ultimate manual on enduring suffering, on maintaining undefeated dignity in the face of absolute destruction. He wrote, "A man can be destroyed but not defeated." Yet in his own life, Struggling profoundly with severe mental and physical health issues, he ultimately took his own life.
It is a devastating realization, and it forces the reader to grapple with a really difficult question. Does the author's tragic end invalidate the resilient message of the book? I would argue that it doesn't invalidate it at all. It makes it infinitely more poignant.
I completely agree. It proves that the sharks aren't just out in the Gulf Stream tearing at our projects or our businesses. The most dangerous sharks are internal.
The struggle to remain undefeated isn't a one-time battle where you kill the fish, defeat the sharks, and then you're safe forever. It is a daily, exhausting, lifelong fight against despair.
Hemingway gave Santiago the peace and the internal victory that he so desperately struggled to find for himself. He built a monument to human endurance precisely because he understood, intimately, exactly how hard it is to simply endure.
The book is not a documentary of his own state of mind. It is an aspirational text. It is a reminder of what the human spirit is capable of holding on to, even when the physical body and the surrounding circumstances fail completely.
So let's synthesize the crucial insights for you, the listener. We started by asking how a story of complete material failure becomes the ultimate symbol of triumph. We've seen that it requires prioritizing precision over luck.
Placing your baits exactly where they need to be day after day in the dark, controlling the only variables you actually own.
It requires the psychological mechanics of endurance, learning how to invent your own bone spurs, finding ways to benchmark your pain and borrow strength from your past to survive the holding pattern of a long struggle.
It demands an understanding of the extreme vulnerability that immediately follows massive success, recognizing that the moment you land the great prize, the blood is in the water and the scavengers will arrive.
And ultimately, it requires a radical redefinition of victory. Success is not the meat you bring to the market. The market will always take its pound of flesh. Success is the irrefutable fact that you held the line.
Success is that you remained undefeated in your core, even when your project, your company, or your life's work was stripped down to the white bone.
And that brings us to one final provocative thought, something for you to carry with you after this deep dive ends. Throughout this entire agonizing ordeal, 3 days of intense physical pain, starvation, exhaustion, and catastrophic loss, Santiago manages to sleep a few times.
And when he dreams, he never dreams of the giant fish. He doesn't dream of his past victories like the grueling arm wrestling match in Casablanca. He doesn't dream of the sharks or his dead wife or the violent storms at sea.
He only dreams of the young lions he saw playing on the long yellow beaches of Africa when he was a boy working on a square-rigged ship. He described how they played like young cats in the dusk, and he loved them.
At the very end of the novel, after he has lost absolutely everything, his body ruined and his prize devoured, he is asleep in his shack. And the final line of the book is, "The old man was dreaming about the lions."
So I leave you with this question. When the scoreboard of your own life is broken, when you strip away your grand ambitions, your devastating failures, the intense pressures of the market, and the sharks that constantly tear at your work, what are the lions on the beach that bring ultimate, untouched peace to your own mind? Because discovering what those lions are for you might just be the greatest victory of all.